You're listening to Tuned Into NoCo. This is Priscilla Martinez, and today I'm speaking with Jen Ryan, Executive Director of Casa of Larimer County. How are you today, Jen?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Priscilla.
For those who are unfamiliar, what is Casa of Larimer County and how did it come to be?
We are a nonprofit that has served Northern Colorado since 1987. We're affiliated with a national network, and like the very first CASA program that came to be in Washington State, we were founded by two local judges who served on cases in the court involving dependency and neglect, where children had experienced abuse or neglect, and these judges were charged with making really critical decisions about placement for the children, services, what that long term was going to look like for the children, and they just didn't feel like they had the information that they needed to make that decision as well as they needed to. So from that, CASA was born, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And so what we do in our CASA program today, just from how it was started, is we screen and train community volunteers who advocate and work with children who are involved in those cases. So our volunteers commit to 12 to 18 months on a case, during which they have a court appointment, which appoints them to a child or maybe a group of siblings, and they're meeting with those kids regularly, at least twice a month, often weekly. They're talking to schools and doctors. They're gathering that information for the court so that they can be presented in a factual report to the court. But the fun piece of it is that weekly regular meeting with the kids, where our CASAs really get to provide consistent support to kids who are maybe moving placements, moving schools. Their life is really often in transition. And the CASAs are able to come in and go to the park and grab a scoop of ice cream, or just provide that consistency, never demanding anything from the child, just there to be an ear to listen, so that the court knows what that child needs. Many of our kids are placed at home with mom and dad, so the CASAs take an active role in supporting both the child and the families. Our program really trains and supports and coaches those volunteers in making sure that kids and families have the resources and the supports that they need during this time. We also have a second program, which is called Family Connections, which also supports children and families by providing supervised visits and safe exchanges. We do parenting lessons and provide supportive case management for children and families. This program operates out of the Harmony House. You may have seen the old brick farmhouse on the south side of Harmony, just east of Ziegler. It looks a bit out of place, but it has a wonderful atmosphere where children and their non-custodial family members can safely come together and share quality time, much like they would in their own home, but with our team here to support them.
Jen, how did you find your way to Casa Larimer?
So I found my way here, almost 6 years ago. My kids were getting older, and I'd done the school volunteering and really didn't feel like I was, what happened was my second daughter was in a class, and I had done arts and crafts, and I'm not good at arts and crafts. And I really wanted to help in a more meaningful way. And so there was a student there that I started working with. He was a little behind the pace of the class. And so I just came in weekly and was working with him. And I really enjoyed that one-on-one interaction and felt like I was able to help him make some progress. And then I read about CASA. And I was hooked from that day. And so I actually started as a volunteer before I became a staff member. I served on 2 cases and really just felt that hopefully both the impact that I had on the kids that I worked with, but certainly the impact on me was pretty amazing. It's, I think, sometimes easy to get overwhelmed with all the things that you see wrong in the world. And it's nice to feel like you're doing something tangible to try to make a positive difference.
I've spoken to other people that have started off as volunteers and then made their way up. And I think it's great because you know exactly how it works, from the beginning.
Definitely seen all sides, but I really love the organization. The people who work here and volunteer are passionate about what we do and really strive to help support the best outcomes for our kids and families.
How big of an issue is what you're helping trying to solve here in Northern Colorado?
Okay, well, to give you an idea, last year we served on over 70% of the dependency and neglect cases in our jurisdiction where a CASA was deemed appropriate, that were eligible for a CASA volunteer. So we served just over 70% of those cases, and we had 197 volunteers appointed to children in our community. Now, not all of those cases started in 2021. Some of our CASAs have been on cases for a year or two, and we have a few even longer than that. But it's a big need, and it's a large commitment for a volunteer. This isn't our old magistrate used to always say, this isn't, Girl Scout cookies are great, but this isn't quite like selling Girl Scout cookies. This is week in and week out. This is providing advocacy and seeing kids in need and making sure that you take the time to find the facts and do the research so that the court has the information it needs. The need is large. It's our goal to provide a CASA for every child who needs one, and it's going to take longer for us to meet that goal.
And in your time with CASA, how have you seen it make an impact in Northern Colorado?
So when I was sworn in as a volunteer, 6 years ago, there were 4 people in my class. So four CASAs who were sworn into the court through that class, and about 20 volunteers that year. Last year, we trained and swore in 101 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
So we're really making good strides toward closing that gap. But again, it's going to take a little more time.
I always tell people this, you don't have to name obviously any names or anything, but do you have any personal stories that you would like to share? Anything that has stuck with you throughout these 6 years?
So I think about, I have so many memories of times with kids that I worked with, but just make it general. I think the best memories are those times that you're with kids and there's all this stuff going on in their world, and there are placements and there are court issues and there are school issues and all these things happening. And in that time that you get to be with the child, they just get to be a kid. So you can be driving in the car, blaring music and listening to the kids sing. You can be having a picnic, you can be, running through the park, swinging on the monkey bars. Those times when you just see the child just relax and laugh and enjoy that they're a child, and those worldly issues and problems kind of just disappear for a little while.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this again on the show. I always say this, but little things are not trivial. I mean, that could mean the world to somebody, and it's amazing that you guys do this, because they can just, even if it's just for a little bit, not worry about any of that stuff and just be a kid.
Yes, it's so important. We had a volunteer who was on a case for, I think she was appointed to these kids for over 2 years, and she was, it was a sibling set, trying not to get too specific, but there was one child in the group who always took that parental role and was always responsible for what the other kids were doing, even when this volunteer was there and trying to make it light and fun. And I'll never forget the email I got when she had taken this child out one day, and she just started doing imaginary play with these 2 toys that they were sitting having lunch with, and was feeding one of them. And it was the first time this volunteer in all that time had seen this child just relax and let go and play. And there's nothing like it.
Yeah, a lot of kids carry that burden and that responsibility, or sometimes it's part of their personality, but sometimes it's okay, once they find out that space is safe. Okay, I can let go of that. I can let go of this just for right now. I can be a kid.
We've learned so much about trauma and its impact on behavior and development and all of that over the last few years, and how critical that is to our services and how we approach kids and families. I mean, our parents have experienced it as well. That's been a change or an evolution, I would say, in our programming as we add evidence-based programming and really work to educate our volunteers in what trauma is and what that looks like in our kids.
If anyone's listening or knows somebody that's in need of assistance, how can they reach out to Casa of Larimer County?
So you can reach out to our website anytime, which is www.casalarimer.com. To be involved in the CASA program, you have to be, family has to be court involved in a dependency and neglect case. So anyone can make a referral for CASA in that circumstance, but that is the only court case. It's written into the state statute. That's where we're involved. Our second program is one that more people might need to reach out for services for.
So more with that question, that is more of a program where people can reach out and ask for help.
Yes.
Without having to go through the court appointing.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And so any families, whether they're court involved or not, can participate in our Family Connections program. Again, that information is available on the website, and that team will gladly reach out to connect with anyone who needs support.
And this is probably on your website too, but for our listeners who want to get involved, how can they donate or volunteer?
Great question. Yes, that's on the website. We do have an event coming up, our annual Light of Hope event. That's on March 22nd. It's a luncheon at the Embassy Suites. The Light of Hope event is a great time to come and learn about CASA, ways to get involved, whether you choose to be a donor or you have time that you can give to a child as a court-appointed special advocate. So we certainly would invite anyone who would like to come to that to please do.
What do you think lies ahead for Casa of Larimer County for the new year for this 2022?
We will continue to increase our capacity to provide a CASA for every child who needs one. We also recognize that as much support as we can provide to kids and families while they're with us is really critical during this time. So we've added evidence-based programming over the years. We have a nurturing parenting program through the Family Connections, which builds those parenting skills. This year, we're adding more trauma-informed education through a program called Trust-Based Relational Intervention. So we'll have opportunities for both volunteers, parents, placements, foster parents to participate and learn more about, like we talked about before, trauma, its effect on behaviors and developments, just building up those tools so that we as caregivers can best support our kids.
Is there anything else that you would like listeners to know?
I would just say we are so grateful to be in this community, so supportive of what we do. I mean, just the fact that last year over 100 community members chose to come in and go through a pretty rigorous screening training process, and then make this huge commitment to children. I think it's truly an investment in our community. I think every time that we devote time and energy to positively impact children, we're positively impacting the community we live in, and we're just truly grateful for this community support.
Jen, I want to thank you for coming on to Tune Into NoCo to talk to our listeners about Casa of Larimer County.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Again, that was Jen Ryan, Executive Director of Casa of Larimer County. Learn more at casalarimer.com.